Hustling, 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 hustling. Every day I'm hustling, 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 every day I'm every day I'm every day.
Welcome to the Master Soul podcast. I'm your host Soul, coming to you from sunny Southern California. As you know, we have a big weekend in sports coming up. NFL continues to roll along with week 4 on the horizon. Also a lot of good college football games as well, slated for Saturday. But we also have UFC 229, headlined by Khabib versus Conor. And to discuss this fight and the rest of this card, we are lucky enough to have the expert himself, the UFC aficionado, Shaf, calling in, Pretty Boy Shaf, calling in from Brooklyn. How you doing, man?
I'm great, man. Glad to join you. I don't know about expert, MMA expert, but the pretty boy part you definitely got right.
That's true.
For sure.
That's definitely for sure. I got that one right. Cool, man. Well, yeah, thanks for taking time out to join us to go over this card. I know this is definitely something that, you know, I think both of us have been looking forward to, and a lot of UFC and MMA fans have been looking forward to for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, let's get straight into it. You know, obviously the Khabib Conor fight is the main headline, and I think it's probably one of the most, anticipated UFC fights, in quite a while, ever.
I would say in history, probably the most anticipated UFC fight ever. I mean, going back to the days of the Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddells and whatnot, I would say that this is probably the biggest fight in history. What I will say, though, is that I'm a little surprised with the promotion of this fight. I don't know if you agree with me or not.
Really?
Granted, the magnitude of this fight, I don't think it's being promoted as hard as it should be.
You know what?
I think you could agree with me on that.
I am kind of surprised by that as
right?
well. Yeah, because they had the one press conference in New York, right? Which was kind of bizarre because there was no fans.
Yeah, which was lackluster.
Yeah, it was lackluster, and yeah, because Conor also likes to feed off of the fans, like all the crazy drunk Irishmen that show up and they go nuts, and then you have all the like Dagestanis and the Russians coming for Khabib, but like it was just like it was awkward. Definitely,
it was awkward. Yeah, he'd have his one-liners, and the room was silent.
Yeah,
it just didn't have that same impact as those other like past press conferences with the Nate Diaz or Eddie Alvarez like a few years ago.
Yeah, and I think part of it was probably to do with the security issues as well, just because of what happened last time. So, and I'm sure the New York NYPD, shout out to Ronnie Mack, by the way. NYPD probably had something to say about that, and kind of had their own restrictions with that. So, but understandably so. But yeah, I do agree that it wasn't as hyped from a promotional perspective.
Because I'm a little surprised. I felt like the Nate Diaz fights, there was a little bit more buzz going around. This one, there should be a lot more buzz. Granted, the whole bus incident that took place in UFC 223 back in April 2018. I think they kind of relied on that as just a promotion, the whole bus incident, which happened now. It's been several months since that happened.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if they're cutting costs on advertisement or whatnot, but they just figure that that's going to be enough to sell the fight. And Conor as a whole, him being a brand and whatnot Conor himself being a brand and whatnot is going to sell a minimum of 1 million pay-per-views without any promotion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I do wonder if that had partly to do with why they just didn't want to spend money.
Lack of promotion, and also like after Conor McGregor, when you look at social media following and whatnot, Khabib is probably the second biggest star in the UFC right now. Social media following and whatnot, and I mean he's not as big in the US, but internationally he's pretty well known.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a global star now, and he's very well known throughout the world. I agree 100%. So obviously we have that fight, and we have also a pretty decent main card. But let's start out with the prelim card.
Right.
Are there any fights in particular that you are interested in seeing that kind of catches your eye?
So in the prelim, right? I'll just name the early prelims and prelims, and I will highlight on the ones that I think could make an impact in their respective divisions. Early prelims, you have Long Islander Ryan LaFleur versus Tony Martin, a welterweight bash. Then you got two UFC veterans in Gray Maynard versus Nick Lentz. You have a lightweight bout between Scott Holzman and Brazilian Alan Patrick. And then you have a bantamweight bout between Lena Landsberg and Yana Kunitskaya. The prelims now, you have women's bantamweight Aspen Ladd versus Tanya Evinger, welterweight bout between Vicente Luque versus UFC newcomer Jalen Turner, and you also have
This is Sergio
Pettis versus Jussier Formiga. And the bantamweight bout, you have Sean O'Malley versus Alberto Quinones. I think me and you can both agree that the UFC is very high on Sean O'Malley.
Yep.
And he also brings a certain level of excitement to his fighting, and already has built quite a big fan base already.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. I mean, he kind of almost reminds me a little bit of Zabit. So for those of you who don't know, Zabit is another Dagestani fighter who's kind of like a tall, lanky guy who's just an awesome striker. And I don't know if Sean O'Malley's necessarily completely on his level, but kind of has the same type of style, right, as far as his striking is concerned. I don't know if you agree with that.
Right. Zabit Magomed Sharapov is just a whole different animal. I mean, that's a guy that can be a potential champion within like a year or two from now. Sean O'Malley, I would say, is more in like the beginning of his career. The UFC, you could tell, is trying to build him up. They do want him to be a star. Has that big afro, smokes a lot of pot, charismatic on camera. You know they're trying to build him up. So they're not giving him the toughest fights. They're giving him winnable fights at this point in his career. They're giving him stylistic advantage matchups at this point.
Yeah.
So you could tell they're trying to build him up. But he has a lot of promise. He's in his early 20s. He is a huge bantamweight. I mean,
5'11".
This guy, I don't know how he weighs 135. I mean, during fight day, he's definitely got to be up to close to 160. I mean, the guy's over 6 feet tall.
Yeah, he's a real tall, lanky dude, and I wonder. I'm assuming he probably walks around at like 155, 160 at least, right? But yeah, he's definitely one of the top, I think, prospects
Definitely.
in the UFC, and so yeah, I definitely am interested in seeing this fight, and I do agree that they are trying to kind of build him up. So I think they're fully expecting him and hoping that he wins this fight.
Yeah, I mean, they gave him a guy named Jose Alberto Quinones who was on like Tough Latin America. I mean, guy's not exactly, he's not, that guy's also, I wouldn't consider him to be like an actual UFC fighter. He's there to make him look good, basically.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
And then, also, I mean, besides Sean O'Malley, I think so that's actually the featured prelim bout, because that's like they're trying to showcase Sean O'Malley in this prelim. But the bout before that, Sergio Pettis versus Jussier Formiga is actually an important bout for that division, where Henry Cejudo just recently beat Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson.
That's right.
I would say that if Sergio Pettis beats Jussier Formiga, I mean, as of right now, Mighty Mouse is out with an injury or something. He's not looking to fight right now. So Sergio Pettis wins impressively. I mean, you could put him there behind Demetrius Johnson for a bout with Henry Cejudo potentially if he wins impressively. I mean, he's coming off a big win against Joseph Benavidez, who's been one of the top dogs in that division for a very long time. And basically everyone else in that division has already fought for a title except for Sergio Pettis. So if he wins impressively here, I mean, it could definitely elevate his status and put him towards a title shot contention.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that, it is when Mighty Mouse lost, I think it really kind of just threw that whole division up in the air, right?
Yeah, I mean, it gives new life to this division.
Yeah, because he's been running that for God knows how long, and I don't think anyone anticipated that ending as well.
Right.
So yeah, there's definitely opened up opportunities for different guys, and yeah, this is definitely, I agree, is a great opportunity for Sergio Pettis to put on a good show. And again, a lot of times when you are on these prelim cards as well, it's not just about winning; it's how much you win by. It's almost like college football standards, where
right.
If you can put on a great show and you can especially dominate your opponent, it definitely will go a long way as far as getting set up for a big match moving forward. So awesome. So cool. So that was pretty much just a quick, obviously, review of the prelim and early prelims. Those are definitely the Sean O'Malley and the Sergio Pettis fights for sure to keep an eye on. And those, of course, will be on FS1. So if you guys aren't going to the pay-per-view card, you can still watch that on cable. So moving on to the main card. So the first fight of the night on the main card on pay-per-view will be a women's strawweight fight between Michelle Waterson and Felice Herrig. What are your thoughts on this matchup right here?
So I would say this is a toss-up. This is a toss-up, actually. Stylistically, they kind of negate each other. Both extremely well-rounded fighters. I would say in the striking department, Michelle Waterson would have the edge on Felice Herrig. In terms of just pure toughness and grittiness, I would give the edge to Felice Herrig. Both really need this win. I mean, Felice Herrig is coming off a loss against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and Michelle Waterson is coming off a win against Courtney Casey, but that doesn't really do much for her stock win against Courtney Casey. So both of them really need this win to keep themselves relevant in the top 10 of that division.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they're both kind of somewhat middling fighters, kind of
right.
within the women's strawweight division.
Point.
Yeah, at this point. And I am kind of surprised. I thought they'd be able to put together a better matchup, because I'm assuming they kind of want to get a women's fight on the main card. But considering it's a Khabib Conor fight and it's going to be in Las Vegas, we figured they'd probably get something a little better. But
no, the reason they did it was because Michelle Waterson's hot. You got to throw in the occasional. You got to throw in the hot chick fighter with a nice ass in there for the male viewers.
That's true.
That's what it really is.
I mean,
if you didn't
Vegas,
know,
right?
She was a bikini model, on the side while she was fighting, back in the day.
Yeah. That's true. That's right. I completely forgot about that.
And Felice Herrig is just a pure Instagram thought.
Yeah.
Loves to post pictures, naked pictures on Instagram.
Oh, God. Lord mercy.
So, you know what? I don't even care. I hope they both lose.
Yeah, and I think even if one of the ones, I'm not sure how much it'll do for them moving forward, just because it's kind of like a middle fight to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, either one, whoever wins, none of them is moving towards title contention anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but it'll be interesting to at least see how that works.
But you're absolutely right. It's politics. They got to put in one women's fight in the main card.
Yeah,
it's a big platform. Eyes are going to be glued just to watch a Conor fight. So then they figure, why not throw a women's fight in there?
Yeah, 100%.
Get them exposure.
Oh, yeah, it's almost pretty obvious at this point. Yeah. Cool. All right. So moving on to the next fight, we have a heavyweight bout between Derek Lewis,
the Black Beast,
versus Alexander Volkov. So Derek Lewis is 20-5. And then I think Alexander Volkov right now is coming in at 30-6. So this is an interesting one. What do you think about this matchup?
Honestly, this is actually I mean, on paper, Alexander Volkov should win this match. On paper, I mean, he is the favorite. Although Derek Lewis is coming off a win against Francis Ngannou, I don't know if you watched that fight, but that might have been the
it's
worst
terrible.
heavyweight fight in UFC history.
Absolutely terrible.
None of them engaged. Like, I don't even consider that a win for Derek Lewis. I mean, they both lost in that fight. It was terrible. So it doesn't really say much a win over Francis Ngannou in that fight. But Alexander Volkov has been impressive in the UFC. He's 4-0 so far. And he's coming off a big knockout, a 4th-round knockout over former title holder Fabricio Verdum.
Yeah, and that's an impressive win, right?
That's super impressive. I mean,
Super
Fabricio Verdum was a champ. He knocked him out in the 4th round. I mean, this is a guy that's coming. I mean, he's only had about 4 fights in the UFC. I think he came from Bellator, so a win over here. I mean, there's not really much else he has to do to get a title shot.
Yeah.
In that heavyweight division. I mean, there's really no one else left in heavyweight. I mean, Francis Ngannou was the next big hope, and we saw how he did. And then you got Stipe Miocic there. You got Cain Velasquez, who's always hurt, hasn't been active. I mean, all you really left is Alexander Volkov. If he wins here, you got to consider him. You got to consider giving him a title shot after this.
Yeah, and he's still only 29 years old.
Yeah, he's a young guy.
He's coming into his prime.
Not even that. He's from Russia. UFC obviously wants international champs. It's good for the sport.
Absolutely. And I agree. And then the weird part about the heavyweight division is, I agree. I think everyone anticipated, I did at least, that Francis Ngannou was going to be he was just going to take over the division, right? It was perfectly set up. This huge puncher with this amazing striking skills, at least from the waist up. And, it was perfect for the UFC because he's just such a marketable guy, right? Because it's so exciting to see a guy. Yeah, go ahead.
He's a big, strong, athletic looking guy. I mean, you could tell they were really upset when he lost. Yeah, they were stuck with the champ in Stipe Miocic, where when he talks, no one even understands what the hell he's saying.
Yeah, nobody in the UFC, as far as from upper management, wanted him to win because he's not a marketable.
It's terrible. Whenever he does an interview, I'm like, what is he saying? I still don't understand.
Oh God, yeah, I think that was a big letdown for the UFC when Ngannou lost, and then he said he came up against Derek Lewis and thought it was going to be a rebound fight, and he was worse. I mean,
he did worse. And you know what? You know what that tells you? Like, obviously we know he's not a bad fighter. What that tells you is the sport of MMA, yes, has a lot to do with skill, but it is a huge mental game. You could see that after that Stipe Miocic fight, Francis Ngannou was not the same guy. It got to his head. He was gun shy against Derek Lewis. You could just tell. I mean, it's all mental, this sport.
Yeah, it's huge. And especially, and some guys too, especially once they kind of get touched up and kind of get embarrassed, which he kind of did against Stipe.
He looked like an amateur.
Yeah, he doesn't look like the same guy. And you have to think, is he ever going to come back to form where he was when he knocked out our boy from Amsterdam, or Rotterdam, I should say, sorry.
Right. Alistair Overeem.
So it's unfortunate, but hey, it's still a great opportunity now for Volkov, and I think this is a definitely good matchup, especially Derek Lewis.
Right. I mean, this is his platform right here. On the biggest pay-per-view, all eyes on him. If he gets a big knockout here or impressive win, I mean, you can't really argue against him. You got to give him the title shot next. I mean, there's only just him. There's Curtis Blades, I believe, and Stipe Miocic, obviously, who has been the champ for a while. I think he deserves an immediate title shot, but so many guys, I mean, coming out. I mean, I don't know if you heard, but John Jones, his suspension's coming out.
That's right. Which I can't believe. I cannot believe.
I mean, I love it.
Yeah, it's great, but
because the UFC's lacking like all their stars. I mean, let's face it. Besides this event, Conor McGregor has not been active since November of 2016. And
I
after
know.
Conor McGregor, John Jones was the star. You don't have him. I mean, Jose Aldo's always injured. You know what I mean? Like the big stars, George St. Pierre doesn't fight. All the big guys don't fight in the UFC. So like we've been lacking star power.
Yeah, and let's be honest too, Dana White isn't exactly a model of integrity. So when it comes to like obviously like failing drug tests and injuring people, like Connor did, he just doesn't. He'd rather just make money and doesn't care just because whatever. He just figures it's the UFC, it's MMA. Who cares about this stuff? But all right, cool. So moving on to the next fight on the main card, and I know you're excited for this one, is the light heavyweight bout between Ovince St. Preux. I think I said that right.
Yep, Ovince St. Preux, former Tennessee volunteer football player. This is a battle of actually two NCAA Division I football player, former football players.
That's right. So St. Preux, and then it's versus Dominic Reyes.
I mean, Dominic Reyes didn't quite play for Tennessee, but he played for the Stony Brook Seawolves, but it counts. It's
all right, it counts. It counts. Long Island. Shout out Long Island. Yeah. Shout out Seawolves. What's up?
So this is an interesting matchup. OSP is ranked 7 in the division. He's coming off a head kick knockout over Corey Anderson, and Dominic Reyes, I mean, he's 9-0 in the UFC. I mean, he's 9-0 overall, and so far undefeated in the UFC. As I mentioned, 9-0, 8 first-round stoppages.
Wow.
That's pretty impressive. And we all know after John Jones left or was suspended, the light heavyweight division is probably, I would say, probably the weakest division in the UFC. They barely have anyone in that roster right now at light heavyweight division. I mean, you had solid guys like Ryan Bader, Phil Davis, a lot of them left for Bellator.
Yeah, I mean, there's I mean, can you say, I guess, you put Cormier in there?
I mean, Cormier is it. That's it. He has no competition really at that weight class right now.
Yeah, and he's basically at 40 years old now. I mean, he's not going to be around. I can't even believe this guy is still fighting. But yeah, they need new blood. They need new blood. This division needs new blood. I agree 100%.
And there's a reason why they put this guy, Dominic Reyes, and OSP in this main card. I mean, they're hoping that Dominic Reyes, I mean, we already know what OSP is capable of. I mean, he's a veteran of the UFC. He fought John Jones for the title and went the distance with him. But I mean, in terms of other than John Jones fight, other than that, he hasn't been able to beat like top 5 fighters. He usually chokes against them. But he's always dangerous. He's got that sneaky left hand. His Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a little underrated. He did what's known as a Von Flute choke, which is one of the rarest chokes in the UFC. I think he was one of the first to do that, actually. Dominic Reyes, because he has 8 first-round stoppages, we haven't seen him fight that much. Like, we haven't seen him go a distance, so I don't really know what he has in his arsenal.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I mean, OSP is a big light heavyweight. It's not going to be very easy to just knock him out like that.
Yeah.
And I would say this is a huge step up in competition for him. So it's interesting.
Do you and I guess that's probably why they did put this out, put this matchup out to give Dominic Reyes a good matchup, and
right, definitely is a good matchup for him because I mean, let's face it, we know that OSP is not a wrestler. He's going to try to strike with you. Dominic Reyes, I don't believe, is a wrestler either. So, I mean, it's definitely, they tried giving him a winnable matchup here.
Yeah, and that's the thing that people have to realize is that a lot of times the UFC just sets up fights, set up for one guy to win.
Exactly.
And this is definitely one of these cases where they're hoping for Dominic Reyes to win. And if he loses, which I think if he does, it would probably be something, as you said, kind of going to the second or third round, where he's just not really comfortable and not really sure which way to go.
Right.
I'm sure they'll be very disappointed, and I think most people will as well, because he's a really good prospect moving forward. All right, cool. Now on to the co-main event. So this is the main event and co-main event are both lightweight matchups. So this one, interestingly enough, is Tony Ferguson versus
ironic, right?
Anthony Pettis. So ironic.
Because now Tony Ferguson should be in this main event.
Of course. I mean, it was
Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, and as many of you know, last time Khabib fought, he was supposed to face Tony Ferguson, and that fight also had a lot of hype. And the press conferences were great. I mean, they were just having phone calls between each other, and it was amazing. They were talking smack for like 20, 30 minutes at a time.
The hate was real.
The hate's real. The hate continues to be real. It's awesome. And I think that was like the fourth or fifth time they tried to get that fight together, and of course it fell through because Tony Ferguson had his sunglasses on and he somehow tore his ACL. Which is ridiculous. But and I think Anthony Pettis was actually wasn't he one of the potential?
He was on that card as well.
Yeah, he was on that card.
He was supposed to fight Michael Chiesa.
That's right, and Chiesa got injured on the bus by Conor McGregor and his goons. And Anthony Pettis, I think, was actually one of the potential replacements for Tony Ferguson, but that didn't end up working out. But so
he wanted more money.
Yeah, he wanted more. He was basically set up to take on Khabib, and last minute was like, "Nah, pay me," and they were like, "No, we're not." Which is a pretty shrewd move that didn't really work out for him. But nevertheless, he's got a co-main event fight here versus Tony Ferguson, big name. So Tony coming off that injury. I mean, I think that Tony's probably an overwhelming favorite here. But what are your thoughts?
Overwhelming favorite. I mean, minus that injury, man, this guy has 10 wins in a row. His last loss was in 2012 against Michael Johnson. It's a long time ago. Other than that, this guy smashed everyone almost. He's been outclassing most of his opponents. Will he come back the same though post knee injury? That's a question.
Yeah, he's getting up there in age too. He's obviously 34. And he's a great athlete, and he's probably one of the hardest workers, I think, in the UFC. Like when it comes to training, you think about guys like GSP who are just absolute animals, who are just like live, breathe, sleep, training and MMA. He's one of those guys. So if there is someone that can come back from it quickly and get back into shape, he's probably one of those guys. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how he can bounce back. Do you think Pettis has any shot in this?
So here's the thing. I mean, Pettis has exchanged wins for losses, that kind of thing. He's coming off a big win against Michael Chiesa, but Michael Chiesa is nowhere near the caliber of fighter that Tony Ferguson is. If we were to talk about who Khabib's most scary matchup could be, there's only two names that come up. There's Conor McGregor, and some would even say a scarier matchup than Conor McGregor could be Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, which is why everybody wanted to see that fight, right? Because it's such a good matchup.
I mean, we could get to that later, but yeah, Tony Ferguson is just dangerous everywhere. I mean, he's got this like relentless pace. He'll get you to the ground. He'll somehow pull off a submission. The only thing with Tony Ferguson is, and this is definitely a favorable matchup for him. He should beat Anthony Pettis, but the problem with Tony Ferguson is that he's a very slow starter. He often loses the first round a lot in many of his fights. And Anthony Pettis is one of the best kickers. I mean, despite his downfall in the rankings, the guy can deliver a liver kick. And if Tony Ferguson, I mean, if he endures any of that, it could be bad for him. So that's really Anthony Pettis' only shot, is take advantage of Tony Ferguson's poor first start, which he usually has.
Yeah, and he's probably pretty rusty, right? I mean, I don't even know the last time he's fought.
I mean, yeah, it's been a long time since he's fought. I mean, his last fight was almost a year ago. It was against Kevin Lee for that interim belt.
Oh my goodness, that was a while ago. And Kevin Lee, of course, is another guy that is kind of lurking in the background in the lightweight division, trying to get a shot to kind of get with the big boys within lightweight. But yeah, so this I think this will be interesting. I do agree. I think that Pettis probably has a kicker's chance, I guess you could say. But Tony Ferguson's probably an overwhelming favorite. And I think that the UFC also kind of strategically did this as well. It's perfect. Of course. Because you have the lightweight main event, which we'll talk about next, which is Khabib versus
right. I mean,
Conor.
If Tony Ferguson wins, I mean, he's basically next in line to fight the winner of this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're kind of like the three kind of pseudo champs of lightweight.
Right.
Nobody knows who's like the true champ. And it's just like this 3-ring circus between the three of them, kind of trying to figure out who's the lightweight champ. And it's a perfect segue, right? Because basically he's just going to take on whoever wins this fight. I think it's pretty straightforward.
And you know what's strange, right? In these UFC events, all these fighters, they share like a locker room. You know that, right?
They what? Yeah, they share a locker room, of course. Yeah.
So like either way, I mean, I'm sure there's two sets of locker rooms. One is like home, one's away, whatever.
Yeah.
But Ferguson, either way, is going to either be there with Conor or he's either going to be there with Khabib. Like, either one. Can you imagine how this guy feels?
I can't imagine they put him with Khabib.
How weird is that?
There's no way they're going to put him in Khabib's locker room.
Actually, you know what? Conor probably has like a VIP room. He doesn't go in like the locker with all the other fighters.
That's true. Yeah, but there's no way they're going to put Tony and Khabib together. Although they might have a good TV if they can get some footage of them talking smack.
But yeah, not even that. During like fight week, all these fighters, they're basically staying like, without the exception of Conor McGregor, they all stay in the same hotel.
Yeah, that's what
they're at the gym, they're cutting weight around the same time, so there's got to be a lot of tension there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of what boiled over last time, right? Khabib saw what's his name in the hotel lobby, and that's
Artem Lobov.
Artem Lobov, that's right, and that's how the whole thing started. Because Artem Lobov, I don't know what Russian politics they were getting involved in, but they were just yelling at each other in Russian. And next thing led to another, and then Conor McGregor is lit off his mind with 30 of his boys from Ireland, and the rest is history.
Well, yeah, which brings us to the main fight. Let's just get to it.
The main fight. We've been waiting for this one for a long time. Khabib Nurmagomedov, 26-0, undefeated still to this day, versus who is, by the way, the defending champion, versus Conor McGregor.
Who we can say is a former champion, but just likes to carry the belts around.
Yeah, carries multiple belts around.
Yeah,
I guess you could say the former champion. And this matchup, of course, as you said, it's probably the most highly anticipated matchup in UFC history. Obviously, not just because they're both superstars, because of the personal history and beef, especially from last time they fought. Well, last time Khabib fought in Brooklyn. And I guess all the drama aside, from a stylistic standpoint, obviously they come from two different sides of the spectrum. Khabib is a grappler and a wrestler, probably the best, I think, hands down right now in the UFC. Best grappler by far. I can't even think of anybody who's actually even close to as dominant as he is.
No, absolutely not.
No, and Conor, of course, is one of the best strikers in UFC, and who's so you have guys that are complete opposite sides of the spectrum, and having them clash, and this is going to be really interesting, especially for the mixed martial arts community, who's kind of like the hardcore guys that love like seeing different types of martial arts, and seeing what's better, what works better versus not. And yeah, so I guess we'll get into it. I mean, what is your viewpoint on this fight? How do you think it's going to go? And
honestly, I think on paper, and then I would say most fans and analysts will make Khabib Nurmagomedov the favorite in this fight. But I don't think it's that straightforward. In fact, I think this is a very tricky fight to call. Extremely tricky fight to call. As we know, all these fights start standing. And Conor McGregor is dangerous that first round. Here's the thing with this fight. The way I see it, this is either going to be a big beatdown delivered by Khabib Nurmagomedov. He'll beat the crap out of Conor McGregor. Or he's going to get knocked out within the first round. That's like how hard this fight is to call. And let me explain why I think that. So, Khabib, obviously, we know his style. He's not a striking specialist by any means. This guy will take you down. But the problem with his takedown is it's not a traditional wrestling takedown or double leg, they call that. He clinches with you against the fence. And in order to clinch with someone in the fence, you might have to absorb a few shots, which is probably the worst thing you could do with Conor McGregor. It was one thing if he's taking a shot from far away and taking him down, but he has to get close to Conor McGregor and clinch with him, which means that he could potentially feel that left hand of Conor McGregor. And we know his stand-up defense isn't the greatest in the world. So that's Conor McGregor's way of winning. I think that's his only way of winning, and it's very doable. Because, like I said, just the stylistic matchup here and the way Khabib takes people down, he could get touched up pretty badly. I don't know if you see that too.
So I do agree. I think it is a bit of a dangerous fight for Khabib for sure. By the way, I think Khabib right now is a slight favorite. Looking at the odds, but right. It's just about even at this point, and I think
it's because of these reasons. I mean, what I'm telling you isn't like just my opinion. I think that's how anyone that's a UFC fan and that watches these two fighters closely will, I think, can realize that see the same thing, that this is how the fight could end up if Conor McGregor were to win. That this is his way of winning.
Yeah, and so I do think Khabib will be able to come out with a win in this one.
Right, I do too. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I think he'll be able to come away with the win, but I do think, obviously, as you said, Conor does have has a puncher's chance knocking him out even in the first round, and I think a good kind of comparison of what could go down, somewhat of a similar fight from the past, was the Khabib versus Michael Johnson fight. And if people remember, Michael Johnson touched Khabib up.
Yeah, that's a blueprint right there.
Yeah, he jumped out in front, and people were like, oh, wow, like maybe he's probably going to win and Khabib's going to take his first loss. And, Khabib was able to kind of withstand his flurry of attacks. But he was able to kind of keep his composure. He was able to kind of, fend off some of his strikes. And then once he was able to get him down on the ground, it
was all 10-8 rounds after that.
And it wasn't even just like, oh, he won. Like, he destroyed him. It was like hard to watch. It was so bad.
If Conor McGregor if Khabib survives that, if he survives the first initial striking exchange, once he gets him down, the fight's over. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, and
Conor McGregor is not getting up.
And I think that's what Conor's probably going to try to do. He's probably going to try to get very aggressive early on.
Yeah.
And probably try to catch him with something. Because obviously Khabib's not that great in stand-up. I think he's been improving, but he's obviously not that. He's just not that good, to be honest.
So I mean, I think Khabib, what he's got to do is, I don't know if you watched the if you remember from the Al Iaquinta fight, Khabib,
We were there.
Had one takedown where he didn't do a clinch. He actually did it's kind of like a ankle pick takedown, whatever. Like he shot from far away. Conor McGregor takedown defense, I think, is worse than Al Iaquinta's takedown defense. So I think Khabib's got to go in with a shot like that as opposed to a clinch takedown.
Yeah, that's interesting perspective. Yeah, I think if he can, I think his best shot, Khabib's best shot, is obviously withstanding some of Conor's shots. And Conor does have also a reputation for getting gassed. And once he can get that, once he can kind of get him a little out of his element, and then once he gets takedown, because Conor doesn't have great takedown defense. I think he can win it pretty. I think he has the opportunity to dominate this fight. But with that being said, Conor just as easily can win this, knocking him out. So it'll be interesting. I'll just end it with this. I think my viewpoint on this fight is similar to where the betting odds are right now. I think I have Khabib as a favorite, and I think he'll just do enough to kind of withstand the early flurries, and he'll do what he does, the ground and pound. I don't know about you, but that's kind of.
I agree, and if he withstands that initial striking exchange with Conor McGregor, I have him beating him in the second round.
Really?
Via submission.
You don't think Conor even makes it to the third?
No, I don't.
Now, do you think that because he's just going to get gassed out, or he just can't?
Yeah, because I feel like he's going to try to empty that tank. He's going to try to throw him with his hardest shots in the first round. And once you get taken down by Khabib and you don't get up, that's very exhausting for a fighter. So after that, he's just going to take a beat down. That's if he survives that, like I said, that striking exchange. Second round, Khabib hates this guy, so I don't know. I think he's out there to prove a point. I think he's gonna beat him down again on the ground. Conor's gonna lose that energy, or his energy is gonna be zapped, so he's not gonna have that knockout power going into his second round because he's gonna take such a mauling in the first round. And through exhaustion, I think Khabib's gonna be able to pull out an easy submission while they're on the ground.
Interesting. It's calling second round. That is definitely an aggressive prediction. I would probably say I'm gonna guess. I will say Khabib in the third round by submission, and you know what? Either by submission.
Farther.
I'm just trying to be a little bit safer. You know what? I don't even think it'd be submit. I think the ref is going to stop the fight.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah, I think he's just going to beat him to a pulp, and I think he's just, as you said, he's going to be gassed out, and I think they're just going to forget this. This is ridiculous. And again, people have to realize Conor hasn't fought in UFC since 2016.
Yeah.
I'm not right. I'm not wrong in saying that, right? I think it was 2016 was his last.
Yeah, November 2016, and now thinking about it, one thing Khabib's really got going for him is that he hasn't taken any damage in his UFC career.
No.
Especially to his chin.
It was just Johnson.
That's it. And obviously he was fine. He might get shaken up, but he's never been knocked out. So I don't think he's the type of fighter who's just gonna get knocked out with one punch. So hypothetically, say Conor McGregor gives him a big shot, he goes to the ground. Guess what? Now you're in trouble. If you follow him down the ground, you're in trouble. Because you're just going to grab a hold of his legs, and then you're in his world.
Yeah, definitely.
If he follows him to the ground. So he definitely has that going for him. I think his chin should hold up.
Yeah, and this will be a great test. This is going to be a great test for sure. And I know we're excited about it. I'm sure you guys are all excited about it. So definitely looking forward to this fight. It's going to be awesome. That's for sure. Okay, man. Well, as we, wrap up this segment, aside, obviously, this is a fight that we've been looking forward to for a long time. Moving forward, though, or looking forward, what fight are you most looking forward to seeing in the future within the next, like, I don't know, 3 to 6 month period or through next year?
Honestly, it's a long way to go, but I'm looking forward to Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum.
Ooh. Kings MMA, shout
I
out.
think that's an excellent fight. And I honestly don't know who's going to win that. Stylistically, they match up really well with each other. I mean, that's a fight I'd pay to watch.
Yeah.
And another fight, I wish it would happen, but it's kind of been canceled. And I think this is an excellent matchup. Yoel Romero, this is not a title fight, but I think it's just two top middleweights. Yoel Romero versus Paulo Costa.
Ooh.
That's a great matchup. I mean, when it does come together, I think Yoel Romero got injured or something happened where they had to call off the fight, or he wasn't ready to fight in time. When that matchup does happen, that's another fight to watch. Other than that, I mean, after this, I mean, the UFC's everything's kind of up in the air. A lot of fighters are injured. The champs are injured right now. So there's a lot of uncertainty going on right now. Daniel Cormier, unexpected winning the heavyweight title. You don't even know what's going on in the heavyweight division or the light heavyweight division. Basically, two divisions are in a stalemate right now.
Yeah, awesome, cool. Yeah, those are two definitely interesting matchups. For me, I'll say one that I am looking forward to is, and I'm assuming this has got to be a given that they'll have this set up, is Tyron Woodley versus Colby Covington. I think this is a matchup that has been. I think this has obviously been a rivalry that's been brewing for a while. Both of them do not like each other. Tyron Woodley, of course, has been, owning that division for a while now, and Colby Covington obviously is the up and coming guy who I also think is probably like the most openly racist guy in the UFC, and Tyron Woodley is having none of that and never has. And so there's going to be plenty of bad blood. I think it's going to be political, and it's going to be just I think the hype for that fight is going to be off the chains because I think it's just going to be ugly from the beginning.
The thing is, like, both guys aren't, I wouldn't say both guys are mainstream. I mean, outside of like the hardcore MMA fans, I don't think many, casual fans will know about these fighters.
No, they don't.
If you're a true MMA fan, that is a great fight for sure. Yeah,
and it's I think it'd be a great matchup, and it's definitely one that I'm looking forward to seeing. Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yes.
But awesome, man. Well, hey, that pretty much wraps it up for this. We went through obviously some of the undercard fights. Went through the main card as well. Again, UFC 229 is going to be on Saturday night in Las Vegas. Definitely looking forward to it. Thanks a lot for joining us, man. I really appreciate it. And
glad to be here.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully we can have you on again next time. There's a good card coming up. So thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.
For sure.
Hustling, 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 hustling. Every day I'm hustling, 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 every day.